those gymnasts at the circus, they're
Mhm.
doing like extraordinary results. The first time they landed that trick, there was a net under them. And all the times they practiced until they landed that trick, there was a net under them. So it's like figure out what net you need. And for me, that was a part-time job for many of the first couple of years. It was also like connection and support with my community to let them know what I was doing. And I made sure there was a net there so that when it did come time to swing out to do the trick, I had practiced it when there was safety, and so it was just a little bit easier.
Hello, hello, hello. It is a joy to be with you today. Today, for our Coach Spotlight, we have the one and only Slam Johnson. This woman is amazing. If you have not met her, oh my goodness, what a treat. Slam is here. She's a graduate of the Academy for Coaching Excellence. She's been a coach for over 5 years now, and she's just one of our just stellar students. And so if you look at our website, you'll see that Slam did a coach spotlight some years ago. And we're just checking in with her now to see what lessons has she learned, how has she grown, any wisdom that she has to share, as well as what is she working on now. So with that, Slam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Temple. It is a pleasure to be here with you. I love getting to catch up with you and celebrate.
Yes, today is all about celebration.
Mhm.
So, with that, Slam, if you could just take the journey and go back to when you did your original Coach Spotlight, and when you look at what your experience was with coaching then to where you are now, what would you say were the lessons that you've learned since then?
Yeah, so I got my CTP. I completed my CTP around 2022, but I put out my shingle earlier than that, and then the spotlight was a couple of years into my coaching, right? So I had launched my individual coaching offering and had been consistently building my client base. When I first launched, I also had a part-time job for many years, and I think when we talked, I had just like been a few months or even a year out of no longer having a part-time job, right? So I was in the first maybe year of being totally self-sufficient from coaching, which was wild. I remember those days of looking at what my roster looked like, what I was charging, what was coming in, what I could start to trust about my business. And I think I just kind of built that trust with my business enough to be like, okay, I can start to count on this, which was wild. It just like blew my mind that that was even possible. I dreamed of it for so long. And now I've been totally living off of coaching for many years now, and it's just amazing. There are moments where I get off a call with a client and I put my head in my hands because I'm like, really? I get to do this? I get to sit with people in these moments. So it's been really rewarding and amazing because I know I talk to a lot of coaches at different phases in their business, and it's like we all love coaching. There's no doubt. Um, but there's well, I mean, we're gonna get to this that journey from loving coaching to being in business coaching. And I think at that point I had also been experimenting with a few different group programs, and I now have solidified the group offering that I have, and building legs, it's growing legs, it's building traction. It's really become something that I'm really proud of.
Wow, this is phenomenal. I love how you're speaking to consistency in terms of how you approached your practice. And with that, what would you say that you were consistent about that really supported you in making that leap from a part-time coach to a full-time coach?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think one of the things that did happen was, so many of the early years was the metaphor of throwing spaghetti on the wall, which is really a humorous metaphor. But it was experimenting with a lot of things, and it was in being in launch energy a lot of the time. Like creating the sales page for a brand new offering, sharing it with people, getting feedback on like, does this word make sense? Does this result? Can I guarantee that? This kind of thing. And so I was consistently developing the skill of inviting, of the invitation, right? Which is like first touches of meeting somebody and then saying, hey, this is who I am, and do you want to come in for more? And that includes things like branding and a beautiful website. And a lot of the coaching that I got and had witnessed my peers receive in early days, it was like, don't worry about that stuff. And I took that advice to heart and I didn't worry too much about it. And over the years, it became it emerged on its own. My brand, my colors, my tone, who I am. And I think I was consistent with being myself and finding the people that I loved and supporting them and then letting those details emerge from that, right? So the sales page copy came out of those conversations. I didn't build it in order to have those conversations. I built it in order to have more of those conversations, which is a big difference, right? In early days, it's like, I'll do anything to have people step into my Zoom room. Like, well, how do I get them? And so I, tried a bunch of stuff failed. Not necessarily because it was bad, but because of its timing or of its invitation. And so I stuck with it. And I feel like that made all the difference. I was hungry enough, I was committed enough to like really go for it. I remember listening to a podcast once where this guy was saying, everybody gets into coaching and then they get into education or they get into event production or they get into some other modality. So if you just stay coach and you just offer individual coaching, all of your peers will fall away because they get roped into some other scheme and you'll be remaining in the field. And in my experience, that was true. I stayed with my client base. I stayed curious about what they needed, and which was like easy, right? I picked a niche that I'm genuinely passionate about, and so I just stayed curious about what folks needed, and I showed up to support in all the ways that I could. But I did it from myself, like from who I am and being myself.
And what is your niche, by the way?
So I work with queer small business owners. I support them to take their business from scrappy to stable. And a little secret, I believe that everybody's a little bit queer and a little bit business owner. So in some ways it's like I think it's a really inclusive niche. But it does focus our conversation. I think a lot of folks enter into the ecosystem aware that the community is going to be a celebration of queerness and that there is a focus on small business. And so that has made it um, more easeful to connect with people at the right time in their journey.
Hmm. When you were speaking earlier, you used the word invitation, and I also saw that you were also enrolling, constantly doing enrollment.
Yeah.
For many people, that is on their hero's journey and a point of mastery. What words of wisdom would you give someone who is wants to be where you are in terms of their experience with enrollment?
Yeah. Well, and I just fell in love with the concept of enrollment while being a student at ACE because of the opportunities for empowerment and consent and real genuine support and well-being for the folks that we're talking to when we're enrolling. And actually, the curriculum of the group program that I offer, which is called the Queer MBA, the Queer Meaningful Business Approach, has 5 modules that are directly inspired from this idea of enrollment and the invitation, right? So, a business, and this is speaking to coaches that are launching a coaching business, right? A business must create something of value for people that they care about. It must be at a price they're willing to pay. It has to deliver and serve and be satisfying. And it has to bring in enough energy to make the exchange worth it, right? The juice worth the squeeze. And so, you know, a lot of times coaches are, I think, marketed to like, here's how you can make $5,000 a month and have a larger audience. Just give us $5,000 a month. And it's this kind of like weird, like, well, I see how you're getting $5,000, but that's not actually how I want to get $5,000. So I think those 5 steps really break it down. And there's enrollment at every step, right? So when we start with like who are these people that you care about, that's getting into the niche. But as coaches, we know that those folks are where we used to be. And so we can already start to look at like, well, how did I get enrolled into this journey? Where am I? Who am I? How did I get here? And that can already start to speak to the invitation of just who are they? And a lot of times I encourage folks, and I did this too, to interview folks that fall into that niche. Like, who are you? What challenges are you facing? Where have you looked for support? Just having a few conversations with people who are your ideal client can make such a game changer for what you're designing and how you're talking to them and starting to see the language that they use. And really like going back and empathizing with where we used to be, right? Because it's not like we went there and then we came here and now we're done. It's like, no, that was real. We went through that. And we might even uh, have memories from that, and like learn lessons akin to it these days. So I think it shows up there when you're like working with who your ideal clients are. And then I think it shows up, it's for people that you care about. And then we get into like at a price we're willing to pay, right? So you have to tell them that you exist. And then you have to provide something that's important enough to them, relevant, meaningful, necessary, that they're like, I will give you some of this energy, often in the form of money, but time, all these other aspects too, right? They're like, I will give you some of my life force energy because you are giving me life force energy, which like we do that in our relationships all the time. We do that in our communities all the time, especially for folks that are of service. We're constantly giving, 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 right? And receiving, receiving, receiving. So it's not that different, but it can be unfamiliar to be like, I do this thing, will you give me money for it? I believe that this money is totally going to return tenfold. You can hear like as I'm saying, I'm like exaggerating the like uncertainty in my own voice because it takes a tremendous amount of courage and clarity and trust with those folks to say like I actually think this is going to support you. I think when a program is priced and designed appropriately, your people will see it and they'll say, "Oh my God, I can't afford not to do this." But to get to that point takes a lot of connection, a lot of relationship with those folks to really understand what they need and how you can help. And I think that is, again, what I've loved about the ACE enrollment style. And also where I've gotten to like really get to know myself to the point where, speaking to the brand earlier, I'm hearing when I meet new people, they're like, wow, you're on brand, like who you say you are and who you look like on your website and what I'm experiencing in your Zoom room is matching. And that is really freaking exciting. And that didn't come easy. You asked, I don't know, you said something like this, like, what would I tell my younger self? Like, it's coming, like it doesn't, and it's, one of our famous ACE questions, like, would it be okay if it got a little bit easier? It's like, yes, and it might take some effort in these times. So, be nice to your brain and to your heart as you go on this ever so courageous journey.
I really love how you're speaking to how it is courageous, the
Hmm.
compassion that we give ourselves throughout this time, as well as knowing that it is coming. That is
Yeah.
really, really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so earlier we did talk about what would you say to Slam a few years ago that you would say that is coming. Would there be any other words that you would share with Slam from a few years ago?
Mm. Yeah, I read this book called Zen Guitar, and I read it for my own education as a musician, but I applied. There's so much from that book that applied. And one of the things about like strumming a guitar and finding your rhythm on the guitar was the slower you play. the faster you will practice.
Mhm.
And I think this is incredibly true in coaching, in business development, in really anything. And as somebody who moves incredibly fast for whatever reason, I know that every time I slow down and really practice precisely, practice perfectly, that those are the moments where I really learned and grew, which is why I talk to my coach and talk and have had many different coaches in addition to my mentor coach at different times in order to really slow down and look. And I think this is what ACE does so beautifully. This is why I've been such a student of the work, is because it has supported me to to find structures that allow me to slow down in a way that like feels safe enough to try and safe enough to really look at what's happening. To zoom in to find that fractal, that holograph of what is happening in this moment. What is the what's the anything from the divine meeting to the just the like structural truth of what's happening that when looked at can shift into place just a little bit.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's hard, it's uncomfortable, and like if you're out there hoping to have some discovery calls while also trying to feed your family from those discovery calls, you might consider getting a part-time job just to take the edge off because uh, that's a hard conversation to have, especially if you're coaching them, this potential client, to some greatness in their life, like having even if it's a especially if it's a self-built safety net, is crucial in order to launch really any business. Those gymnasts at the circus, they're doing like extraordinary results. The first time they landed that trick, there was a net under them. And all the times they practiced until they landed that trick, there was a net under them. So it's like figure out what net you need. And for me, that was a part-time job for many of the first couple of years. It was also like connection and support with my community to let them know what I was doing. And I made sure there was a net there so that when it did come time to swing out to do the trick, I had practiced it when there was safety. And so it was just a little bit easier.
I really love that metaphor because it makes so much sense that when you're right, those gymnasts, we see them and it's like, gosh, how they get there? Well, a lot of practice and they
Yeah.
had a safety net. Makes sense. So
Right.
with that, what's some of the exciting things that you're up to now?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, and while we're talking, I'm experiencing the relief of remembering that like all those people out there that I might have been comparing myself to or like using their story to fuel some urgency. Like what a relief to like know that they also had some sort of net under them too while they were growing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, some things that are happening is the Queer Meaningful Business Approach, the Queer MBA has I took it from a 3-month program to a 4-month program, and I'm enrolling little grohorts or small groups. They're not little, they have 6 people in them, but they're small groups. One small group will form each month. And so these small groups or grohorts, I like to name things. I like to have a little bit of fun with my business. They get together every other week with me. We do group coaching. But then all of the growherds come together for the Monday huddles that happen, which includes sometimes I do a training or we have a guest presenter or we just do co-working. So there's like this nice like sense of there's a larger community while also some really focused attention for the 6 folks in each growherd. And then part of that has like allowed me to add more support calls to that program. So I've also launched a thing called the Money Party, which is a combination financial literacy and also getting your money shit done. So that's happening on the fourth Wednesday of every month, and that I'm just experimenting with open that anybody can sign up for that for just those 5 calls. One of my experiments was a group program called Love Your Money, and maybe that will come back one day. But I realized having 2 group programs was like just too much for me. So I've doubled down on the Queer MBA, but I'm adding this element because money is such a crucial part of business. And so that we're just adding in more support systems to have those conversations. So that's part of it. And then I'm playing around with my pricing, which is I talked to a numerologist about my new pricing and she said, well, it sounds fun. And I said, okay, well, that's on brand. So we're good. Um, the money party is $111 or 111. Instead of like using it's $97, like the illusion that it's $100, it's actually like, no, it's $100 and $11, and you have enough money to spend more than $100. You can spend $111. So that feels really good. And I've been offering this quarterly 2-day tune-up, which is for also for small business owners, where we do the vision and the business model, and that is 222. So like lots of twos on a 2-day tune-up for 222. So that's really exciting. The Queer MBA is 333. And then actually at the end of this quarter, I'm going to raise my individual pricing to 777 a month. And I realized that the next time I raise that, I'm just going to add a fourth seven and it's going to be the whole 6 months. And that's so like this, I just get to keep growing with this fun money because it's not, it's about the money. It always is, right? Like, but it's really about the investment in yourself and about that saying yes to what is possible. And when it's so glaringly obviously going to take you or me to the next level of growth, it's like the money is a puzzle. It's not the thing. It's like, what is the yes for me here? And these adjustments in my business model allow me to grow and thrive, which is something I was never allowing for myself in my previous businesses. And I see my clients doing that more and more for themselves. So that feels like really huge and fun to get to experiment with it and to really say, well, if I raise my prices, like what am I making sure my clients are getting? And what does that make space for me to give?
I love how you spoke earlier about slowing down, actively slowing down, being very clear about what you're offering, the value that you are bringing, and then being willing to have fun and go through these points of mastery to continue to grow your business. I mean, honestly, it's almost like that's what it's all about. I mean, I've been in business for a little bit myself too, and I would completely agree that that is what it's about. And even to even speak to what is next, because you already know what's next, what you're working towards.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful because you now know what is your next goal. What are you playing for?
Right. Well, and I mean,
Mhm.
that's Ace has always talked about the playing field. And I'm like, right, like the playing field, it is constantly changing. There's a goal worth playing for. It's going to take energy and it's gotta be fun.
Yeah.
And running drills, if you're talking about soccer, like run, or actually for me, for frisbee, right? I played ultimate frisbee in college, and I was not a fast runner, but I loved to throw the frisbee. So I just threw it with my friend, like one friend, over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of times a day. I threw that frisbee, and so I found a way, even as a non-traditional athlete of like running sprints and stuff. That was never me. I figured out how to be a handler to throw the frisbee well and still be a contribution to my team. And I think I followed what I loved, you know? And I think that's the key piece. I just celebrated my mom's 80th birthday and she did a round of toasts. And at the end, her friends toasted her. It was really, really sweet. People just had the sweetest things to say. And the next day, when she was reflecting, she's like, the things that people recognized me for, the things that they appreciated the most, were the easiest to give.
Hmm.
And I thought that gave me a lot of ease and peace for myself. Like, follow what is easy to give and give it, give it, give it. And make sure, the posture is working so I'm not harming myself. And then therefore I'm not harming the people I'm working with. And that's part of why I include scholarships in my programming too. There's still accessibility options, but it's really about really creating an environment where everybody can win so that everyone
Mhm.
can play.
Love that. Well, as we wrap up, Slam, if they want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Oh, I would love to connect with anybody that's watching this video. Nimblerootscoaching.com is my website. You can also go to queermba.com and that'll get you there. I host a free monthly Queer Business Owner Meetup. That is really fun. It's on the first Wednesday of the month at noon. That's a great place to come and hang out. We can get a one-on-one in that call. Actually, we have 3 rounds of one-to-ones. I host a free workshop called Let's Talk About Success, baby. You know what song I'm talking about. Um, that's really fun. That's a fun way to hang out. Yeah, and I think that's those are good launching pads. So I would love to hear from you. I'd love to connect. And Temple, such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me and to celebrate this milestone.
Oh, please. It is my pleasure. It is an honor. And for full disclosure, I do know Slim. And one of the things that you're seeing is just how her creativity just emerges and how she uses that to support what she's doing in her business and having fun at the same time. So,
Mm,
guess what? If you saw that for yourself, then it also means that it's possible for you. So, with
absolutely.
that, thank you all so much for tuning in. Please keep your eyes out on the website, acecoachtraining.com. We'll be bringing you another Coach Spotlight. In the meantime, this is Temple Robinson, and we will see you next time. Take care.